The ancient world is silent, unaware that its final dawn has arrived. A humid stillness hangs over the valleys, and the sky carries a strange heaviness that no one can explain. Livestock shift uneasily. Birds circle without landing. A low tremor moves through the ground, subtle enough to ignore, yet persistent enough to unsettle anyone who pauses long enough to feel it. The people of the earth continue their routines, unaware that the most catastrophic judgment in human history is only moments away. A single man stands apart from the noise of the settlements. His hands are calloused from decades of labor. His eyes are fixed on a structure that towers above him, a vessel unlike anything the world has ever seen. Noah inspects the final seams of the massive ark, the culmination of a command he received long before the first warning signs appeared. Behind him, the sky darkens in a way that feels unnatural, as if creation itself is bracing for impact. A shocking fact emerges from the ancient narrative. The flood does not begin with rain. It begins with the breaking of the earth. The fountains of the deep burst open before the first drop falls from the sky. This detail, often overlooked, raises a profound mystery. What geological event could match the description of subterranean waters erupting with enough force to reshape continents and drown civilizations? The stakes are immense. If the biblical account preserves a memory of a real, global cataclysm, then the flood narrative is not myth, but a record of humanity's most devastating natural disaster. The question becomes unavoidable. Is there evidence that the world once experienced a sudden, violent, water-driven collapse? The investigation begins here. Please like this video to help support evidence-based Bible documentaries. The first major piece of evidence emerges from the ground itself. Across multiple continents, geologists have uncovered sedimentary layers that appear to have formed not over millions of years, but through rapid, high-energy water deposition. These layers stretch across vast distances, sometimes spanning entire regions with a uniformity that defies slow, localized processes. The claim is simple, yet profound. The Earth preserves the signature of a sudden, global-scale flood event. The source of this evidence lies in megasequences, enormous sedimentary packages that blanket continents. These layers are composed of sandstones, shales, and limestones, stacked in patterns that indicate rapid underwater burial. In North America, the Sauk, Tippecanoe, and Kaskaskia megasequences cover millions of square kilometers with consistent boundaries. Similar sequences appear in Africa, South America, and Australia. Their global distribution suggests a single, overwhelming mechanism. Why this matters becomes clear when examining the characteristics of these layers. Many contain fossils of marine organisms deposited far inland and at high elevations. Trilobites, brachiopods, and other sea creatures appear in regions that today sit thousands of meters above sea level. Their presence indicates that water once surged across continents with enough force to transport marine life far beyond coastal boundaries. The uniformity of these layers also reveals something else. They lack the irregularities expected from slow geological processes. Instead, they show sharp contacts, rapid transitions, and widespread sorting consistent with fast-moving water. In some regions, entire ecosystems appear to have been buried in a single event, preserved in positions that suggest sudden death and rapid entombment. This discovery connects directly to the biblical description of the flood's beginning. The breaking of the fountains of the deep implies a geological rupture of immense proportions. It suggests that the primary source of the water was not the atmosphere, but the earth itself. Modern research has uncovered evidence that could explain such an event. Deep within the Earth's mantle, scientists have discovered vast reservoirs of water trapped within the molecular structure of minerals, like ringwoodite. These reservoirs may contain more water than all of Earth's oceans combined. If this water were suddenly released, the result would be a catastrophic displacement of the planet's surface. The mechanism for such a release involves a process known as catastrophic plate tectonics. According to this model, the pre-flood seafloor suddenly began to sink into the mantle, pulling the continents along with it. This rapid movement would have triggered massive volcanic activity and the eruption of steam and water into the atmosphere. As the fountains of the deep burst open, they would have sent supersonic jets of water miles into the air. This water, cooling as it fell, would have then descended as the torrential rain described in the biblical text. The scale of this event is difficult to comprehend. It was a global restructuring of the planet. The evidence for this is not just in the water, but in the heat. The rapid movement of plates would have generated immense thermal energy, leaving traces in the mineral composition of the seafloor. As the oceans rose, they would have swept across the land, carrying sediment and organisms with them. This explains why we find marine fossils on every continent, even in the most remote inland regions. The death toll was absolute. The world that existed before the flood was scrubbed clean. In the midst of this chaos, the ark stood as the only refuge. Inside, the sound of the storm was a constant reminder of the world being lost outside. Noah and his family waited, their lives suspended between a lost past and an uncertain future. The journey was not just a survival story, it was a transition between two worlds. When the waters finally began to recede, they left behind a planet that was fundamentally changed. The continents were in new positions, the mountains were higher, and the oceans were deeper. The geological scars of this event are visible to this day. They serve as a silent witness to a moment when the fountains of the deep were broken. The investigation into the flood is more than an academic exercise. It is a search for the truth about our origin and the forces that shape our world. The evidence suggests that the biblical account is rooted in a reality so powerful that it reshaped the planet. The geological record, fossil evidence, and mantle discoveries converge to form a coherent picture. The flood was a real catastrophic event with global consequences. This is the peak of the investigation. Please consider sharing this video to someone you know if you believe they might find it interesting in watching evidence-based Bible documentaries like this one. The evidence forms a unified story. The Earth's surface preserves the signature of rapid, continent-sweeping water deposition. The fossil record reveals mass mortality on a scale that defies local explanations. The mantle holds the key to a subterranean reservoir capable of unleashing the very fountains described in the ancient text. Together, these discoveries illuminate a moment when the world as it once existed came to a sudden and violent end. The flood narrative stands not as myth, but as a memory of a real catastrophe. The geological scars, the fossilized remains, and the deep earth structures all point to a world that experienced overwhelming judgment. The story of the flood begins with the breaking of the earth, a moment when the boundaries between the deep and the surface collapsed. The evidence invites a deeper understanding of the ancient world and the forces that shaped it. The investigation concludes with a sense of awe. The earth remembers what humanity has long forgotten. The flood began with a rupture in the deep, and its traces remain etched into the planet itself.